the holy name with a philosophical misconception. In that way, Haridas Thakur gave a brief understanding of the three levels of chanting: Shuddha Nama, Namabhasa, Namaparada. And then he said that in order to overcome the Namabhasa and come to the stage of Shuddha Nama, one should serve the Guru with great attention. And then he ended the chapter by talking about the qualification for the name. For chanting the holy name, there is no restriction of time, place, and circumstance. And one simply has to have firm faith in. Faith is the only necessity for chanting the holy name. Whereas for the other processes, time, place, and circumstances are very important. Then in the third chapter, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked Haridas Thakur that please describe about the Namabhasa. Please explain the meaning of Namabhasa, because by understanding the nature of Namabhasa, one can attain Shuddha Nama. Then Haridas Thakur described Namabhasa. He said holy name is like the noonday, is like the sun. Just like the sun gets covered by the mist and the clouds, similarly, a person is not able to access the Shuddha Nama because of being covered by the mist of ignorance and the cloud of anarthas. Then Haridas Thakur described that four types of ignorance: ignorance about the one's constitutional position, ignorance about the Supreme Lord, ignorance about the sadhana and sadhya. And then he also described the three categories of anarthas: asat trishna, craving for the unreal. Within that, we discussed some four different categories. And then hridaya daurbalyam, weakness of the heart, and aparada. So these are the cloud of anarthas arise from these three sources. So we discuss each of those subcategories in detail. And then Haridas Thakur said that the remedy to overcome the ignorance and the anarthas is that one should take shelter of the Guru and learn to execute spiritual practices and chant the holy name with the understanding of Sambandha Jnana. And one of the function of a genuine Guru is to instruct the disciple about Sambandha Jnana and about the process of Abhideya. So as long as the Sambandha Jnana is not understood, ignorance and anarthas will remain and one will continue to be in Namabhasa stage. And then Haridas Thakur described about the glories of Namabhasa. If you remember, we discussed some 14 points about the glories of Namabhasa. I will again today share the notes so far, so that those who joined later, they will get access to the notes. Haridas Thakur talked about the glories of Namabhasa. We talked about the 14 glories of Namabhasa. And then Haridas Thakur described about the 4 types of Namabhasa of the faithless: Sanketya, Parihasya, Stobam, and Helanam. I'm just trying to recollect so that we know that what we have discussed. And then Haridas Thakur described about the Namabhasa of the faithful, Shraddha Namabhasa. So then he described that how by Namabhasa one can get everything but except Krishna Prema. So therefore, in order to go from Namabhasa to Shuddha Nama, one has to avoid the aparada. One has to get rid of the anarthas. And Namabhasa is actually infinitely superior to the indirect processes of karma or jnana. Then Haridas Thakur concluded the chapter by talking about 2 types of Namabhasa: Chaya Namabhasa and Pratibimba Namabhasa. So he said that although Pratibimba Namabhasa is called as Namabhasa, but Pratibimba Namabhasa is actually, it is Nama Aparada. Because in Pratibimba Namabhasa, a person has a completely wrong understanding about the personality of Godhead. that his form is material, or the holy name is simply a tool to achieve impersonal Brahman liberation. So therefore, Pratibimba Namabhasa is truly not Namabhasa, it is Nama Aparadha. And Haridas Thakur also talked about the Chaya Namabhasa. So Chaya Namabhasa is like the obstructed light, but Pratibimba Namabhasa is a distorted light. So therefore, we discussed that that how the offensive Mayavad mentality possessed by those who chant the holy name with the Pratibimba Namabhasa, it's actually Nama Aparadha. Then what is the deliverance of a person? How can a person who is chanting the holy name with Pratibimba Namabhasa, how can he be delivered? Or what is the destination of such a Mayavadi? So those things were discussed. And then finally, Haridas Thakur said that how to overcome the Namabhas and come to the Shuddha Nama. He said that if a person is chanting in Chaya Namabhasa, then one should carefully avoid the Sangha and the influence of the Mayavadis and serve the devotees who chant the holy name with Shuddha Nama. And a person having Chaya Namabhasa will get realization of the nature of the holy name in due course. Just like when the sun is covered by the clouds and the mist, but in due course of time, sun will appear in the full-fledged form. So one has to just overcome the offenses and anarthas. Then this is the third chapter ended, and in the fourth chapter, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked Haridas Thakur to describe about the offenses to the holy name. So Haridas Thakur described the first offense, Sadhu Ninda. So he described the 26 qualities of a Vaishnava, the primary and the secondary characteristics. And the primary characteristic is the chief characteristic is the Krishnaika Sharanam. And then Haridas Thakur also described about the conduct of a sadhu, conduct of a grihastha sadhu, and conduct of a renounced sadhu. We discussed those things. And then when you see some traces of sin in a devotee, how do we react to that? So Haridas Thakur described that. And then he also described about how to distinguish the real sadhu, the spiritual influence of the sadhu, what is how the association of the sadhus actually affect others. So how we also discuss the various varieties of sadhu ninda, seeing the sadhu by his caste, or seeing the previous sins or faults committed by a sadhu, or focusing on the accidental mistake committed by a sadhu. And then Haridas Thakur described that how a true Vaishnava avoids sadhu ninda. And then in that chapter, we also discussed what is the cause of sadhu ninda. The cause of sadhu ninda is the asat sangha. And there was a discussion about the various types of asat sangha. And then after that, Haridas Thakur described about the types of devotees, because it is also important that among the devotees, we have to distinguish the devotees in order to respect the devotees according to their level. Therefore, we discussed about the Kanishta devotee, Madhyama devotee, and Uttama devotee. And then we said that Kanishta devotee commits aparad, whereas Madhyama devotee, he makes a proper discrimination and avoids aparad. And Uttama devotee, he is above committing aparad. So therefore, one has to at least come to the stage of Madhyama devotee. And then Haridas Thakur ended the chapter by describing about the remedy for sadhu ninda. And then the fifth chapter, we discuss the second offense of the holy name, consider the devatas to be independent of Krishna. We discuss about the position of Vishnu the Jivas and the Devatas. Huh? And we also discussed the various false conceptions. That is, impersonal Brahman without qualities is supreme. That is one of the false conception. Another false conception is worship of the Devatas is equivalent to worship of Vishnu. Huh. And we discuss various concepts that how Devatas give only limited results, whereas Vishnu gives all the results. Huh. Haridas Thakur also described about when a Grahastha is performing the different samskaras which involve worship of the Devatas, how a Grahastha should perform those samskaras. He should first offer the Bhoga to Krishna and offer the Krishna Prasad to the Pitrus and the Devatas. We discussed the right mood of worship of the Devatas, and we should also give up the rules which direct worship of the Devatas for sense gratification. That means a Vaishnava should give up the Kamya karmas. And Haridas Thakur described about the acting according to Varnashram and how a person can go beyond the rules of Varnashram. In that particular chapter, Haridas Thakur described that the spiritual position of Vishnu, and then how to avoid the offense to the Devatas, and of course respect for the Devatas and the remedy for this aparadh. And then last two classes we discussed about the third offense, that is Gurur Avagya. We discussed about the rarity and the necessity of the Guru and whom to choose as the Guru, the various qualifications of the Guru, the qualifications of a disciple, and what is the main qualification of the Guru, and how realization of Krishna is the main qualification, but realization of Krishna coupled with a high birth is a good combination. And we discussed the concept of Shiksha Guru and Diksha Guru. And we also discussed some principles in regarding taking Shiksha. One should be careful when we are taking Shiksha. One should be careful in taking Shiksha from, say, people outside the Sampradaya. Of course, as long as the Shiksha agrees with the teachings coming from one's own Sampradaya, one can accept those teachings. We discussed the principle of loyalty to one's parampara and respect towards other Vaishnavas. And how one should not think the Guru as an ordinary jiva. At the same time, do not think Guru as Krishna. Both underestimation of the Guru and overestimation of the Guru, both were condemned. And one should start the worship of Krishna deity after taking permission from the Guru. And one should chant the holy name after remembering the Guru. These were some principles we discussed. And then we discussed the concept of rejection of the Guru. How when the Guru actually goes away from the path of bhakti, because even when the Guru commits namaparad, he will lose his taste for chanting, and he can go to the extent of committing sinful activities, and such a fallen Guru should be rejected. And in that case also we discuss the examples, case studies of Bali Maharaj, Shukracharya. Rejection of the Guru means basically rejecting the false teachings given by the Guru because of his deviation. But we may maintain that culture of gratitude towards the Guru for whatever help he had rendered previously. So some of these concepts we discussed. And then and we discussed about how one should carefully examine the qualities of the Guru before accepting a Guru. We discussed the three levels of qualification for practicing bhakti: Kanishta Adhikara, Madhyam Adhikara, and Uttam Adhikara. And the three levels of advancement in bhakti: Kanishta Bhakta, Madhyama Bhakta, Uttama Bhakta. And the best I think a guru is that who must be like uttam, in the stage of bhava prema, but such a devotee is very rare for should carry as guru. Uttam but he had condition to Ruchi or Asakti. Discuss points. That Shruti Shastra Ninda. So in that we talked about the necessity of the Vedic literature, how there are 4 defects of a human being. The and then topics.
Hare Krishna, we can't hear. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I think Prabhuji has got disconnected. We'll have to wait for him to come back again.
Okay, Prabhuji has got disconnected. Okay.
Are you able to hear, Haribo? Okay. Yeah. Recollect so that we are actually we know the flow of how the book is proceeding. It's almost taken 20 minutes. So the 10 tattvas we discussed. The first is the Vedas are the pramana, and then the nine topics which are proved by the Vedas are: Krishna is the absolute truth, Krishna is endowed with energy, Krishna is the reservoir of rasa, the living entities are separated parts and parcels of Krishna, and then the position of the living entities in the material world, Nitya Baddha Jivas, and then the liberation of the living entities from the material world, and the Nitya Siddha Jivas, and then the philosophy of Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. So these 7 come under the category of Sambandha Jnana, and then the 8th is the process of Abhideya, Bhakti, and the 9th is the process of the Prayojana, that is the Krishna Prema. These are the 10 topics. So you may also go through the book so that you are actually in touch with what we have been discussing. So there's one more thing which I forgot to discuss. Now we will continue from today. So there is Haridas Thakur mentions that there are 2 things: Shakti Parinamavada and Vivartavada. So Vivartavada is the philosophy of the Advaitavadis or the Mayavadis. Shakti Parinamavada is the Vaishnava philosophy. So a simple difference, the understanding is that according to the Shakti Parinamavada, the Supreme Lord has energies, the absolute truth has energies. The absolute truth accomplishes everything by the transformation of his energies, and while remaining, while actually being situated in a transcendental position. The Lord himself is situated in a transcendental position, but he accomplishes everything through the transformation of energies. That is the Shakti Parinamavada. The simple example which is given for the Shakti Parinamavada, which is given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, both in his conversation with Prakashananda Saraswati as well as Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the example he gives is the example of the touchstone, Chintamani. Chintamani whatever comes in contact with the Chintamani, it gets transformed into gold. But while the Chintamani itself actually remains in its original position. So similarly, the Brahman, the supreme absolute truth, remains in its transcendental position, but through the transformation of the energies, he accomplishes creation, maintenance, and destruction. That is the Shakti Parinamavada. Whereas Vivartavada says that there are different flavors of Vivartavada. One flavor of Vivartavada is that Brahman itself gets transformed. So one flavor of Vivartavada is that they say that Brahman gets transformed into Bhagavan by contact with the Sattva Guna. And the Brahman gets transformed into Jiva by contact with the Rajoguna. And Brahman gets transformed into the material nature by contact with the Tamoguna. And this is called as the transformation of the Lord himself or Brahman, that is the Vivartavada. But another category of Vivartavada is that they say that the Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Only the Brahman is the only reality, and this world is actually Mithya, it is illusory. So in that way, Shakti Parinamavada, Vivartavada. So Haridas Thakur says that the Jiva thinks that I am the servant of Krishna. Krishna is my eternal master. We are related as a particle of light is related to the sun. So Vedas speak of the transformation of the energies of the Lord, not of transformation of the Lord himself, which is against the Vedic teachings. And then yesterday, we discussed about the different offensive philosophies. So why this list of offensive philosophies are mentioned is that because when a person is chanting the holy name, but if a person subscribes to any of these theories, by subscribing to any of the above theories which we are going to discuss, while chanting, one commits offense to the holy name. So yesterday we discussed especially three of the offensive theories: Charvak philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, and the Jain philosophy. I just mentioned briefly these three philosophies, Charvak, Buddhism, and Jain philosophy, they don't accept the Vedic authority. So Charvak philosophy is a philosophy which relies only on Pratyaksha Pramana. Buddhism does not accept the Vedic authority. Jainism, they don't accept they take shelter of certain Tamoguna knowledge and then they decry the Vedic authority. So let us today discuss the other types of wrong philosophies. So there is the Jaimini's Karma Mimamsa philosophies, Kapila's Sankhya philosophy, Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, Gautama's Nyaya philosophy, Kanada's Vaisheshika philosophy, and the Shankaracharya's Advaitavada philosophy. So these six philosophies, they accept the Vedic authority. They are considered to be Astika philosophy because they accept the Vedic authority. But although they accept the Vedic authority, they actually, they don't present the, they have many mistakes in their conclusions. They accept the Vedic authority, but they have interpreted the Vedas and they come up with the wrong conclusions. And all these wrong conclusions of this Karma Mimamsa, Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, and Mayavad, and all these wrong conclusions, they are actually refuted in Vyasadev's Vedanta Sutra. So I will just discuss briefly about some of the wrong conclusions of these philosophies. So Karma Mimamsa. So yeah, 1 minute. So if you want to know a little more in detail, you can study the Prayers of the Vedas Personified, 87th chapter, 10th canto. 25th verse, 36th verse, and some verses it is described. But I'll mention briefly some of the points. First, I will take the Vaisheshika philosophy. It is called as the Asat Utpatti Vada. So one of the point of the Vaisheshika philosophy is that they say that they talk about the eternality of the non-atomic entities. Kannada and his followers, they postulate that they say that the smallest atom is the smallest atom is eternal. They say that actually everything emanates from the whole creation starts by the combination of atoms, and atoms are eternal. So in the Vaisheshika philosophy, they postulate the eternality of non-atomic entities, including the souls who become embodied and even a super soul. They talk about the eternality of soul and super soul, but the mistake is that they say that soul and super soul, they play only token roles in the atomic production of the universe. So they explain that the whole universe is generated by the combination of the atoms. Atoms are the cause of the universe. Although they do talk about the soul and the super soul, like for example, in the Buddhist philosophy, they don't actually talk about soul and super soul. Hare Krishna. In Buddhist philosophy, they don't talk about soul and super soul, but in the Vaisheshika philosophy, they talk about soul and super soul, but they say that they only give some token roles for the soul and super soul in the atomic production of the universe. They say atoms are the cause of the universe. The Supreme Lord is not the ultimate cause of the universe. So Veda Vyasa actually refutes the Vaisheshika philosophy by saying that if all the bodies, if all the material bodies are actually generated simply by the combination of the atoms, because we see that different living entities have taken birth with different karmas. Somebody is born in a rich family, somebody is born in a poor family, etc. Somebody is born intelligent, somebody is born maybe little dull, somebody is born deformed. So different people have different karmas. And if everything is generated only by the combination of the atoms, but atoms have no ethical responsibility, that might lead to acquire certain pious and sinful reactions. So we can't say that, oh, these group of atoms have a pious karma, these group of atoms have a sinful karma. Because of that, the combination of these group of atoms has resulted in a person whose body has taken birth in a rich family. And so therefore, and also nor can the initial combination of atoms be explained as a result of the residual karma of the living entities who lie dormant prior to creation. Like when the atoms are generated and then when the atoms are combined to produce a body, but how do we account for the initial karma of the living entity? Like how does that initial karma enter into those atoms? So therefore, there are mistakes in this theory which say that atoms are the cause of everything, because you can't account for the initial karma in the atoms. How can the atoms have no ethical responsibility? Because of that, some atoms will take pious karma, some atoms will take sinful karma. And this is a brief, we can say these are the mistakes in the Vaisheshika philosophy. And then regarding the Patanjali's yoga philosophy, it says that one can achieve the transcendental status of liberation or the Brahmanhood by a mechanical process of exercise and meditation. So the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, one of the main fault is that it ignores the essential aspect of devotion, that is surrender to the will of the Supreme Person. This is one of the fault of Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. And Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, they acknowledge the personality of Godhead, but in an oblique way. And in the sense that they mentioned that you can use the personality of Godhead, and a yogi can utilize the personality of Godhead to attain liberation. I mean, they say that personality of Godhead is like a helper with whom the advancing yogi can utilize. But in contrast, Vedanta Sutra, Vedavyasa says that devotional service is not only the primary means to liberation, but devotional service is identical to liberation itself. So, and in the Vedanta Sutra, Vedavyasa says that worship of the Lord continues up to the point of liberation, and indeed goes on in the liberated state also. As against the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, which say that advancing yogi can utilize the Supreme Lord. But whereas according to Vedanta Sutra, worship of the Lord continues in the liberated state also. And then there is the third, Gautama's Nyaya philosophy. So Gautama's Nyaya philosophy is called as Sad Vinashavada. So what is Nyaya philosophy? One of the mistake of the Nyaya philosophy is that once a person has attained liberation, that in the liberated state, a person loses the consciousness. A liberated soul has no consciousness. Then, but again, Vedavyasa actually refutes this philosophy in its Vedanta Sutra by saying that the living entity is always a knower. A living entity is always a knower. That means is always a knower means he will always have a consciousness even in the liberated state. So this is one of the mistake of the Gautama's Nyaya philosophy. That means like he says that once a person becomes liberated, he becomes like a stone. He loses consciousness. And then there is Kapila's Sankhya philosophy. Kapila's Sankhya philosophy, it is called as the Sagunatva Bedavada. So all these points are there in the 10th canto, 87th chapter, 25th verse. If you want to study further, you can read that purport and verse. So Kapila Dev's Sankhya philosophy, in that Kapila says that he talks about Prakriti and Purusha. Purusha is a living entity, Prakriti is a material nature. And he says that he says that the living entity has only consciousness and material nature performs the activity. He ascribes consciousness to the living entity and activity to the material nature. So it is similar to that Andha Pangu Nyaya. You know that Andha Pangu Nyaya, Prabhupada said that I have like the Western countries, Western people, they have opulence. They have made great technological advancement, but they lacked a spiritual vision. And India was lacking in, say, technological advancement, but they have the spiritual vision, spiritual knowledge. So by the combination of the lame man and a blind man, both can actually reach towards a destination. A lame man can see, but he cannot walk. But a blind man can walk, but he cannot see. But by the combination, they can actually go towards a destination. That's called Andha Pangu Nyaya. So the same Andha Pangu Nyaya is used by Kapila. He says that the living entity has consciousness, but has no activity. He cannot perform activity. That means he is putting the living entity as a lame man. He has consciousness, or he has the vision, but he cannot perform activity. And the material nature performs the activity, but it has no consciousness. So he puts the material nature in the situation of a blind man. Blind man. So therefore he says that by the combination of the Prakriti and Purusha, the entire world is created. So, but actually this is a wrong theory, because if you say that the living entity has only consciousness and the living entity is not the doer, because according to the Sankhya philosophy, they say the living entity is not the doer, the action is performed by the material nature. So it is similar to the scientist theory that life comes from chemicals. Chemicals are the source of life. Somewhat similar, but it's the sense that they say that material nature is a doer of everything. Matter only does everything. And the living entity, the soul, is not the doer. Living entity, but living entity has only consciousness, but it is not the doer. But this is a wrong theory, because if living entity is not the doer, then all the injunctions of the Shastra, they become meaningless, because the Shastras give different injunctions. Do this and don't do this. They describe many vidhis and nisheda, what is to be avoided and what is to be done. And if the living entity, if anyway it is not going to do anything, if it has only consciousness, then what is the purpose of the Shastras giving different do's and don'ts? And the Shastras cannot instruct the material nature, because the material nature is anyway does not have any consciousness. Anyway, it is it has no consciousness. Therefore, Shastras cannot give instruction to the matter. But if you say the living entity is not the doer, then all the meanings of the Shastra, all the injunctions of the Shastra, they become meaningless. So therefore, the fact that the Shastras give different vidhis, do's and don'ts, that means living entity is also a doer. You cannot say that living entity has only consciousness. No, living entity is also a doer. And we see in the Bhagavad Gita itself, Krishna says that there are 5 factors of action, and out of that, one of the factors is the living entity. And the living entity is responsible. In fact, he is the primary doer of every activities. That is why he gets the sinful reactions. So this is about the Sankhya philosophy, Kapila Sankhya philosophy. And then the next is the Karma Mimamsa philosophy. I hope. Yeah, next is the Karma Mimamsa philosophy. What are the faults in the Jaimini's Karma Mimamsa philosophy? So according to the Karma Mimamsa philosophy, they say that the rituals prescribed in the Vedic literatures, they are the all in all. That means, in fact, the Karma Mimamsa is also called as the Uttara Mimamsa, and the Vyasadev's Vedanta is called as the Karma Mimamsa is called as the Purva Mimamsa, and Vyasadev's Vedanta is called as the Uttara Mimamsa. So in the Karma Mimamsa philosophy, Jaimini's Karma Mimamsa, that Mimamsa Sutra, it starts with the aphorism Atato Dharma Jigyasa. Whereas Vedanta Sutra starts with the aphorism Atato Brahma Jigyasa. So according to the Karma Mimamsa philosophy, the goal of life is to simply keep performing your duties and simply keep performing the Vedic rituals. And by that, you will get elevated to the heavenly planets. And once your pious credits get exhausted, you will come back here. But again, you perform the rituals, you go to higher planets. And the material existence is actually endless. And there is nothing called as liberation from the material world. So Karma Mimamsa philosophy, they do not acknowledge the spiritual realm or Vaikuntha planets. They say that the goal of life is to basically increase your comforts within the material world by performing pious activities. So Krishna talks about this in the second chapter, 41st, 42nd, Vedavada Ratapartha, Nanyat Astiti Vadinaha, Kamatmana Swargapara, Janma Karma Phala Pradam, Kriya Vishesha Bahulam, Bogeshwarya Gatim Prati. So essentially in Karma Mimamsa philosophy, they make the intermediate results mentioned in the Vedic literature to be the ultimate result. So Vedas, they talk about hell and heaven both as only as the intermediate destination. Hell is a place of reformation. A person, a living entity is sent to hell for misusing his free will, and after going through the period of punishment, he is again given a chance. So hell is a place of reformation. There is no concept of eternal hell in the Vedic literatures. And similarly, heaven is there is no concept of eternal heaven. There is only the concept of heaven is only a intermediate goal. For example, if we see Christianity and Islam, they talk about eternal hell, and they also talk about eternal heaven. And Quran talks about eternal. So with all these kafirs, they kill people because the Quran it is mentioned that oh, you will go to heaven and enjoy with many women like that. So, but in the Vedic literatures, both hell and heaven are considered to be only intermediate destination. But in the Karma Mimamsa philosophy, although they say that, okay, like they make going to heaven as the ultimate goal, but they understand that you can't permanently stay in the heaven, but because there is nothing beyond the material world, they say that you go to heaven, and then once your pious credits are over, once your like say credit balance is over, you will come back here, and again you earn the pious credits, again you go to heaven, and again you come back. In this way, you keep going in that giant wheel. Like Prabhupada says in a purport, just like children are attracted by the giant wheel. When you go to a say circus or something, there's a giant wheel. The attraction for the children is that they want to go in the giant wheel because it takes you up and then again it takes you down. But the adults are not attracted with the giant wheel. So similarly, those who are childish, they get attracted to just going to heaven, coming back, again going to heaven, coming back, which is the Karma Mimamsa philosophy. But those who are mature, they look for something beyond the material realm. Why do I simply want to keep going up and down? This is the Karma Mimamsa philosophy, but there are various aspects of it, but in general, I've just briefly given. So, so we discussed the Karma Mimamsa, Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, the Jain philosophy, Charvak, and Buddhism. Yeah, Buddhism, I'll just mention few quotations. So, you know that Buddha appeared in order to actually stop the animal killing, which was going on in the name of the Vedas. Because even in the Bhagavatam, we see that that verse, 10th canto beginning, which says that a person who is an animal killer, he cannot actually, he's not interested in hearing Krishna Katha. So an animal killer is not, he cannot actually think about some spiritual pursuits. If Buddha came to stop the animal killing out of compassion towards the animals who are getting killed, and also out of compassion towards the people who are killing the animals. So Buddha actually rejected the Vedas. It was actually a sort of it was an emergency situation. So just because he and Buddha propagated certain sub-religious principle as the ahimsa as the highest principle. So just like suppose some teacher may be a highly educated teacher, but he may be teaching only ABCD. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't know actually much higher things. Because the student's level was such that the teacher was teaching something very basic things, although he may be much more highly learned. So similarly, Buddha being an incarnation of the Lord, he can teach much higher things, but because people at that time were actually misusing the Vedas and killing the animals, so therefore he just preached a certain sub-religious principle. And like there is a beautiful verse. Once there was a Shyamananda Chakravarti, who was an important member of the Indian independence movement, approached Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and asked different questions. So one of the questions he asked was that, what do you think of the Buddha? So Saraswati Thakur said that Buddha is actually another name for a Vaishnava. And then he said that, but the modern day Buddhists they are wanting in true knowledge of the soul, and for the most part they have deviated from the Buddha's original teaching. So like that Saraswati Thakur mentioned. And in the Narayana Kavacha prayers given in the 6th canto, 8th chapter, one of the prayers states that, may the personality of Godhead in the form of Lord Buddha protect me from activities opposed to Vedic principles and from laziness that causes one to madly forget the Vedic principles of knowledge and ritualistic actions. So you see, one of the important point is that, so all these philosophies, they are all deviant philosophies, whether Gautama's Vaisheshika or Karma Mimamsa or Buddhist philosophy or Mayavad philosophy, they are all actually deviant philosophies, but still they have made certain practical contribution, especially the Astika philosophies. I'm not talking about the, say, Charvak or something, especially the Astika philosophies and even the Gnostic philosophy. We can say the Buddhism is a Gnostic philosophy, but each of these philosophy, they have made some practical contribution at the crucial junctions. Like Buddhist philosophy had made practical contribution in stopping the animal killing at that time. And Shankaracharya's Advaitavada had made a practical contribution by bringing back the Vedic authority, because the Buddhist philosophy actually rejected the Vedic authority, and Buddhism spread far and wide because the king Ashoka adopted Buddhism. So the whole India was actually filled with the Buddhists. But then Shankaracharya, Hare Krishna. Shankaracharya actually brought back the Vedic authority and he drove away the Buddhism. He established 4 matas in the 4 directions, in Dwaraka, Badrinath, Jagannath Puri and Rameshwaram. So Shankaracharya's contribution was that he brought back the Vedic authority. And similarly, these Karma Mimamsa, Sankhya, Yoga, they also have practical contributions, although their ultimate conclusion is different from the Vedanta Sutra. So I will just mention some of the practical contribution of these different philosophies. For example, the Sankhya philosophy explains the evolution of the material elements from subtle to gross. That is one of the contribution. And Patanjali's yoga describes the 8-fold method of meditation. And that is the practical contribution. And Nyaya philosophy sets forth the techniques of logic. And Vaisheshika considers the basic metaphysical categories of reality. And Karma Mimamsa establishes the standard tools of scriptural interpretation. So all these are mentioned in that same personified Vedas praise purport. So these philosophies, their ultimate conclusion is actually different from the Vedas, but they have made a practical contribution, which one can actually, for example, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, they have made some practical contribution. Those tools can be adapted to study the Vedanta Sutra. Yeah, about the Charvak philosophy, like Prabhupada says in one purport about the Charvak philosophy, he says that one of the greatest atheists in the Vedic culture was Charvak, but even he said that cows should not be killed, rather one should take the ghee. In fact, he took that aspect of Charvak philosophy, that Rinam Kritva Gritam Pibet Yavat Jivet Sukham Jivet. Beg, borrow or steal, but always eat food cooked in pure ghee. So Prabhupada said even one of the greatest atheists, or the atheist of the Vedic culture, Charvak, he recommended taking cow ghee. That means he valued the importance of the cows, and not killing of the cows. We can say that is like the practical contribution of Charvak. And of course, Jain philosophy, okay, their philosophy is against the Vedas, but still their culture is actually very close to Satvaguna culture. And that way, we can say that is one positive part. And I'll discuss something about the Mayavad philosophy. Just 1 minute. About the Mayavad philosophy, so there is an important verse which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu speaks to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. He says that Veda Namaniya Bauddha Hayata Nastika Vedashraya Nastikyavada Bauddha ke Adhika. Although the Buddhists are directly opposed to the Vaishnava philosophy because they don't accept the Vedas, they directly say that we reject the Vedas. But the Shankarites are more dangerous because they accept the Vedic authority, but they act contrary to the Vedic instruction. So just say, for example, like somebody who is actually, it's like saying that somebody is a terrorist, and the terrorist actually, he's actually in the terrorist uniform. Of course, there is no uniform for a terrorist, but suppose a terrorist actually, many terrorists are usually Muslims, terrorists only, they terrorist activities. So suppose a person is having a gun, and he's having, say, the t-shirts named after, say, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and then he's having a beard and all the Muslim dress attire, and he's having a gun. So you may wonder that this person must be a terrorist only. So somebody who is actually in the terrorist uniform, he can be easily identified as a terrorist. But suppose somebody is a terrorist, but he is in the dress of a police, then such a terrorist is actually more dangerous. As somebody is a terrorist, but he's in the dress of he's in a civilian dress, so he's more dangerous. So in that way, Mahaprabhu says that the Buddhas, at least, they directly oppose the Vaishnava philosophy by saying that we reject the Vedas. But the Shankarites, they are more dangerous because they accept the authority of the Vedas, but act contrary to the Vedic instruction. So Vedashraya Nastikyavada. So that is why the Mayavadi philosophers, they offer, we said that one of the practical contribution of the Shankaracharya is that he brought back the Vedic authority. That is, from one level, there is a contribution. But if we see the same thing from another level, Mahaprabhu says that Mayavadi philosophers, they offer only lip service to the Vedic authority. But try to escape the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. They only offer lip service to the Vedic authority. Like when we say somebody is only, we say the bol vachan wala, like somebody speaks nicely, but then he doesn't mean, or he acts something contrary. So similarly, the Mayavadi philosophers, they offer lip service to the Vedic authority, but they try to interpret the Vedic literatures, and then they twist the direct meaning of the Vedic statements, and they actually come up with certain indirect meaning. So in that sense, the Advaitavada is nothing but Buddhism in disguise. Buddhism in disguise. That's why I gave the example of a terrorist but in a civilian cloth, or terrorist but in a police uniform. So in that sense, there is no difference between Buddha's Shunyavad and Shankara's Mayavad. But the one contribution of Shankaracharya is that he brought back the Vedic authority. But if we see from another point of view, they offer lip service to the Vedic. They only offer lip service to the Vedic authority, but they actually twist the direct meanings of the Vedas and come up with indirect meanings. And such Mayavadi philosophers consider themselves above the influence of Karma Kanda. For them, the spiritual world is equated with the Shunyavad of the Buddhism. So therefore, there is a very little difference between the impersonalism of the Shankaracharya and the Shunyavad of the Buddha. So, but again, as I mentioned, Buddha is the incarnation of the Lord. He acted for a particular time, place, and circumstance in an emergency way. So similarly, Shankaracharya is also the incarnation of Lord Shiva, who propagated Advaitavad under the order of the Lord, as mentioned in the Skanda Puran. So there is no fault in Shankaracharya. Mahaprabhu, when he converts with Prakashanand Saraswati, he says that Acharya na dosha. There is no fault in Shankaracharya because he acted according to the instruction of the Lord. But in his philosophy, there is a mistake. So therefore, of course, we discussed Mayavad many times previously. Krishna, Hare Krishna. Ujjwal Varna Prabhu. Ujjwal Varna Prabhu, आपका yours is always actually unmuted actually. Can you keep it your mobile phone mute?
Yes, yeah.
No, since last 20 days, every day your mobile phone is becomes unmuted actually. So, Krishna talks about the Mayavadis as the Mayaya Pahrita Jnana in the Bhagavad Gita. So, this is something about the Mayavad philosophy. So then Haridas Thakur says that by subscribing to any of the above philosophies while chanting, one commits offense to the holy name. But again, your mobile is getting unmuted, true. Ujjwal Varan, true.
So it is on mute, Prabhu.
No, it is unmuted, true.
It is on. Prabhu, it is showing mute. I don't know what you have to do. It Krishna. Prabhu, now it is on mute mode.
No, it is not muted actually. So by subscribing to any of the above philosophies while chanting, one commits offense to the holy name. Then Haridas Thakur concludes by saying the direct meaning of the Vedas is pure bhakti, and we find the name Om in the Vedic literatures, and that Om is a name of Krishna. Hare Krishna. So Om is a name of Krishna, and Shankaracharya rejected Om as the principal sound of the Vedas, and he substituted with the impersonal Mahavakyas. So the Vedas proclaim that all the great liberated devotees in the spiritual sky are continuously chanting the holy name. So therefore, Hare Krishna is creating disturbance, Ujjal Varan Prabhu. So the Vedas actually proclaim that all the great liberated devotees are continuously chanting the holy name. So
It's into
I think I will end here, and then we'll continue tomorrow. So today what we discussed in summary was that
Chintu, the statement इधर आओ. Well, मूड क्यों हो जा रहा है?
So today in summary what we discussed was that we discussed the different wrong philosophies of Karma Mimamsa, Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, and the Charvak philosophy and the Mayavad philosophy. And then we said that by subscribing to any of the above philosophies while chanting, one commits offense to the holy name. And then the direct meaning of the Vedas is actually pure bhakti. And Om, which is mentioned in the Vedic literatures, is actually a name of Krishna. And where in the case of the Shankaracharya's teachings, he rejected the Om as a principal sound of the Vedas, and he substituted that with the impersonal Mahavakyas. So there are a few points in this chapter which we'll take up tomorrow, and tomorrow we'll actually go to the 8th chapter, and there's a small chapter, we'll complete that also. So if anybody has any comments or questions, we'll take up. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Rahul.
Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, Kalanidhi Das here. Prabhuji, we discussed various philosophies today. Are they part of the Vedic scriptures or no? They developed later on, is it not? That is question number one. Question number two is Charvaka philosophy, which is completely Avedic, Gnostic. Why does it find a place along with other Vedic philosophies? Thank you, Prabhuji.
See, Charvak philosophy is not the Vedic philosophy because it rejects the Vedas, and it is just mentioned among the list of wrong philosophies actually. So it is, he says that all these different philosophies are obstacle, and if a person believes on these philosophies while chanting the holy name, it's an offense. So Charvak philosophy, it's not it is definitely a Gnostic philosophy. It is not categorized, it is not listed in the category of the Vedic philosophies, but I just mentioned as in the name of category. And in your point about these philosophies, if you see the introduction to Shad Darshan, Sohotra Maharaj says that, he says that these actually traditionally these six schools of thought is that this Vaisheshika, Nyaya, Yoga Sutra, all the six schools of thought, they propagated the Vedic wisdom, but each from a different philosophical perspective. So like initially when the schools started, they were actually they were meant to be different departments in the Vedic education. They were supposed to be different departments in the Vedic education, but in due course of time, what happened was that each of these department, they made deviation from the conclusion of the Vedas, and they came up with different conclusions, which is different from the Vedanta Sutra. So therefore, these, like whether when we talk about Jaimini or all these philosophies, they were actually initially they were meant to be different departments. Just like suppose in a college, different departments of engineering are there, but then so they are meant for different purposes. But suppose some department actually deviates from certain guidelines of the entire university, and they come up with a certain different policies which are actually contradicting with the actual purpose of education, then those departments, their faults have to be pointed out, therefore their faults have to be like rectified. So similarly, initially they were these Nyaya, Vaisheshika, etc. They were meant to be different departments in the Vedic education, but in due course of time they came up with certain conclusions which are different from the Vedanta Sutra. So therefore, Vedavyasa refuted those conclusions in his Vedanta Sutra. But at the same time, as I mentioned, that these philosophies, they do offer practical contribution in the field of Vedic education. So that is why in any of the in a traditional this one, whether Sri Vaishnavas or Madhva Vaishnavas or Gaudiya Vaishnavas, in the traditional Sanskrit education, they do study Nyaya. They do study the Mimamsa, and they study Vyakarana, and they study the Sankhya, etc. Because these they offer certain practical tools in studying the Vedanta Sutra. And also, like Prabhupada says in one purport in first canto, that one cannot sit on the Vyasasana unless a person is conversant with these 6 systems of philosophy. So, of course, to study each system, it itself is it will take many time, but at least if we know what are the main fallacies of each of this philosophy, which I mentioned 1 or 2 points of each of this philosophy, like what is the fault in the Vaisheshika, what is the fault in the Karma Mamsa. If we know at least these main faults in this philosophy, and how they are refuted in the Vedanta Sutra, how they are refuted in the Bhagavad Gita, how Karma Mamsa is refuted in the Gita, how the Sankhya philosophy is refuted in the Gita or in the Vedanta Sutra. At least if we know these points, that will be helpful to actually deal with any philosophical, when you meet with people who come up with these philosophies. And another thing is that, like, although I talked about the different names of this philosophy, sometimes one may wonder that, okay, but I've never encountered these names in the normal world. But again, as I mentioned previously, that these philosophies in the Kali Yuga, they come up with a different package. It may not be, you may not hear the word Vaisheshika or Sankhya or Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, but whatever the mistakes in this philosophy, they may come up with a different package, different package. So therefore, at least we have to know the mistakes, and we should be able to refute them. At least if you know that much, that will be sufficient. Hare Krishna. Is it fine?
4 different paramparas. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Rav.
So Vyasadeva handed over the 4 Vedas to 4 different groups of people to start a parampara. These departments were also created at the same time or not, Prabhuji? Because each of these philosophies is attributed to a different person. I think they all came in different times, right? Like Shankaracharya is supposed to be 7th century, and different people might have come at different times. Did they start the department, or the department already existed and these people sort of developed it?
See these departments. I don't know the timeline, etc. But these departments, when we consult any traditional scholar, they would say that if you have to study the Vedic literatures, you have to know primarily Vyakarana and Nyaya and Mimamsa. Also, there are other things like a Chanda, which talks about the science of chanting the meters, etc. But these three are most important: Nyaya, Mimamsa, and Vyakaran. So these are, like, we can say, it's like the building blocks. Like, for example, another example, like Srimad Bhagavatam is like the ultimate ripened fruit of the tree of the Vedas. It's like the ultimate. So you say the Rasgulla is made. Rasgulla is the ultimate finished product of the Rasgulla, but there is like in order to bring to that finished stage, suppose somebody is studying the different details of the cooking, okay, how to make the sugar, how to make sugar syrup, or how to actually produce the sugar, how to grow the sugar cane, how to grow the sugar cane, how to actually how to take care of the cow, and how to actually produce the milk from the cow. So all these are like Rasgulla is like the final product, but behind that, if you want to study from A to Z how to make Rasgulla, that means how to produce the different ingredients, and then the process of making Rasgulla, and then finally the to obtain the finished product. So similarly, these studies of actually Nyaya, Mimamsa, etc., they are compared to the study of the different processes involved in making Rasgulla. They can be compared to the study of the different processes involved in producing the ingredients. How to produce the sugar. That means first you have to know how to grow the sugar cane, and from the sugar cane, how to process the sugar cane and how to get the sugar. So these Nyaya, Mimamsa, etc., they are compared to those processes. But in that sense, these schools were always listen. They are bona fide schools, but in due course of time, some of the teachers in the schools or some of the people, they came up with this wrong conclusions, and they were actually refuted by the Vedavyasa. And in what timeline they came, those details actually I don't know actually.
Veda is also can be classed along with this. We are not talking about that, or even Visishta Dvaita, Dvaita, and all that. We are not listing in the same category, no?
No, Vishishta Dvaita, Shuddha Dvaita, those philosophies are they are actually Vaishnava philosophies. Shankaracharya, the Ramanujarya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarkan, Vishnu Swami. So they are actually Vaishnava philosophies, but even in those Vaishnava philosophies, there are certain incompleteness. There are certain incompleteness in those Vaishnava philosophies, and those incompleteness were actually reconciled and refuted by the Mahaprabhu's Achintya Bheda. So in the case of these Astika philosophies and Shankaracharya's Mayava Advaitavada, they have major fundamental differences. But whereas Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarkan, Vishnu Swami, these four philosophies, they accept the supremacy of Vishnu, and they accept the position of the living entity as an eternal servant of Krishna, and they accept the eternal nature of the process of bhakti. So this is common to all these four Vaishnava philosophers. But these other Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, so these philosophies, because they have made some fundamental mistakes, especially the Mayava Advaitavad has made very offensive mistake of the form of the Lord to be material. And the other Karmamamsa, they also have like great deviation from the Vedanta Sutra. But But even the Vaishnava philosophies, they have certain incompleteness. So those incompleteness was rectified by Mahaprabhu in the Achintya Veda Beda Tattva. That's why 2 days back I referred to that book of O.B.L. Kapoor. How the Mahaprabhu, there between Achintya Veda Beda Tattva versus Shankaracharya's Advaita Vada.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Veda differs from. If you have to study the Achintya Veda Veda versus the other philosophies, we can refer to the O.B.L. Kapoor. Hare Krishna. Satya Prakash Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, thank you. It was a wonderful learning experience, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Okay. Satya Prakash Prabhu. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Prabhuji, Prabhuji, yeah.
Yeah.
So now in the 13th chapter, we've learned about Prakriti and Purusha. So how does Kapila Sankhya philosophy talk about the super soul? What does he say about super soul?
Yeah, one of the point is that these Astika philosophies, whether Vaisheshika or Kapila Sankhya, these philosophies, they accept the soul and super soul. Unlike they say Buddhism,
Okay.
Buddhism, they don't accept the soul. But these Astika philosophies, they accept the soul and super soul, but they give some token they only give some token role to some super soul, or they make the Purusha subordinate to Prakriti.
Okay.
They make the Purusha subordinate to the Prakriti. That is also like another mistake of the Kapila Sankhya. They say that if you remember, if you see in Prabhupada's purports, in various places, Prabhupada will give one analogy. He will say that material nature is not the cause of the creation.
Yes.
Just like the nipples in the neck of a goat appear to be like the nipples, but the nipples in the neck of a goat is not the source of milk.
Yes.
Considering the nipples in the neck of a goat to be the source of milk, it is a mistake. So similarly, considering the material nature to be the source of creation, it's actually a mistake. So actually, according to the Vedanta, the Lord glances over the material nature, and then the
Yes.
material nature gets the starts everything.
Right.
But according to the Sankhya philosophy, they make the material the Lord subordinate to the material nature. So that is the mistake of the Sankhya. So they acknowledge the presence of the Supreme Lord.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Satya Prakash Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandot Pranam. Prabhuji, the question is not related to class today directly, but like in villages, we greet each other with Ram Ram, or we say Hare Krishna, or in Vrindavan, they say Radhe Radhe, like that. So, does these sound vibrations or these names have any material or spiritual effect on the person, or is it just, or does it not have any effect?
No, definitely chanting this will have an effect. Chanting these things will have an effect. But that is a part of the culture, and people chant as part of the culture. But why we are discussing this is that sometimes like certain things we just take it, we are doing as part of the culture, but people may be committing nam aparad. Somebody may be just chanting Ram Ram, etc. But one may be subscribing to some of these philosophies. So then, in that sense, one may be actually committing the nam aparad. So therefore, like it is important to know that uh, subscribing to any of these philosophies while chanting the holy name, that leads to nam aparad. But definitely chanting even while chanting the holy name with nama aparad, it has some effect, but the effect, the aparad actually is actually blocking the complete effect of the holy name. Just like the anarthas are blocking the other.
Haribol. Haribol.
The point is that they do even the chanting of common people with the holy name, that will have an effect. But when just like the sun is blocked by the cloud, but still we can perceive the presence of the sun, but not the full effect of the sun. So similarly, that they'll have an effect, but the full effect of the chanting of the holy name is blocked by the anarthas.
Prabhuji, let us say he is just a normal person. He does not know any of the philosophies, and he is leading a simple life in a village, let's say a farmer, that type. And they greet each other by saying Ram Ram. They don't follow any philosophy, or they don't. I mean, not following any philosophy. They visit normal temple, a temple in the village, and they in between when they meet, they greet each other with Ram Ram. So that way, if you see that he does not know what is Patanjali of philosophy, what is
Yeah, if anybody who is chanting offenselessly, he will get the benefit.
Okay.
We don't have judge actually, but idea is that anybody who is offenselessly chanting, when people like Ajamil chanted the holy name offenselessly, so therefore he was freed from the sinful reaction. But only when he chanted the holy name with love for the Lord, then he would go back to the Supreme Lord. He could go back to Vaikuntha. So by offenseless chanting, many people chant Namabhasa, that will have the effect. So that's why we discussed about the glories of Namabhasa. So because we want to chant Shuddha Nama, so therefore we are discussing in the details of the offenses.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Haribol, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Prabhuji, today's discussion was very useful, especially the Shad Darshan and the elaboration of all this. I am sincerely requesting if somebody can really make notes on this, whatever you have discussed today. It will be useful for the whole group and even for others for reference. It was my humble suggestion.
I will send the notes in that WhatsApp group. You can go through that also.
Yes, Prabhu, that will be very useful. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And this is the last question I will take. Rajlila Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, can you hear? Prabhuji, thank you very much for the wonderful class. I just wanted to know, you told about this Vaishnava philosophy, Madhvacharya philosophy and Ramanujacharya philosophy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that it is incomplete, and he gave the Ashikya Veda Veda Tattva.
Yes.
So, can you just explain what is that incompleteness between this philosophy and the Bhagavad philosophy? What Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has done?
A different class, because
Hello?
we have to understand. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji.
We have to take it in a different class actually, because each of those philosophies, in order to first get to understand those philosophies, different terminologies are involved in that. And to understand the incompleteness, I think we have to dedicate some other class only.
Okay. Thank you very much.
We will discuss some other time. Yes. I will end the class here, and tomorrow we'll continue at 11 o'clock.